Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Martha from Martha Is. Today's video is my halfway top 10. So that is my top 10 books that I've read so far in 2020, or more specifically in the first half. But I am, by the way, just going to stretch the definition of the first half because one of them is one that I finished on the 2nd of July. So that basically counts. I'm not here for pedantry. So these aren't in any particular order, but they are just all 10 books that I have flipping loved and presumably should come as no surprise to you if you've watched my previous videos. So the first one, which I don't have with me because I have lent it to a friend and then it was lockdown, is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang. Now again, this should not come to a surprise. This should not come as a surprise to anyone because I have raved about this book in basically a minimum 3 or 4 videos. I loved it. I am fully converted to romance now. Just is what it is. Can't do anything about it. I'm gone. I'm a sucker for it now. So The Kiss Quotient is the story of Stella and Michael. So Stella is an autistic woman who has difficulty in, I suppose, relating to other people. Maybe that might not be the right way to put it, but trouble in kind of getting close to people. And she recognises, for example, that she is not necessarily very experienced when it comes to sex, and she thinks she's not good at sex, which is just, that's not fair, not the case. But she thinks she's not good at sex, and so she hires Michael, who is an escort, to teach her how to be good at sex in, I should be able to remember this, but clearly I just barreled straight through it and mostly paid attention to the sex. But she is kind of part of trying to get a relationship or trying to get a husband. Anyway, mayhem ensues and lots of sex and love. There you go. That's pretty much it. Bloody loved it. I think it's because I had flu back in February. It wasn't coronavirus. And my whole brain was complete mush, and so I picked this one up and read it in, I think, 24 hours and just absolutely loved it. And I realised, because I don't really read romance, I haven't really read that many books which are that hot. So that was delightful. So that's book number 1. And then unsurprisingly, book number 2 is The Bride Test, which is the second in the Kiss Quotient series, and very similar. Very steamy, lots of sex, and loved it. So this one is about Kai, who is a very, very minor character in the Kiss Quotient, so you don't have to have read the Kiss Quotient first to read this. So Kai, I think, pops up maybe like once in one scene in the Kiss Quotient. He is also autistic, and his mum decides that he needs to get married, so she finds this woman, and I think in Vietnam, brings her over to the US, and kind of like tricks him into to it, but it's not as bad as that sounds. But Esme is the woman who is brought over. She really wants to find her father in America, and so she comes over and they basically live together, and Kai is doing everything he possibly can not to get into a relationship with Esme, because he believes he is bad at relationships, so he doesn't even want to have kind of casual sex or anything like that. So it's this kind of there's a lot of tension building, and they both clearly want to have sex with each other, and then eventually they do. So, and there's obviously a lot more to it. But yeah, so in both cases, The Kiss Quotient and The Bride Test, one of the other things that I really loved about them was how autism was represented. So I am not an autistic person. I don't have experience in that area, so I'm not a definitive voice on what is good representation, but the author Helen Hoang herself says she is autistic or has autism spectrum disorder. And so I think this is just a really good example of own voices writing, because autism is just presented as a different way of thinking, as neurodiversity. It's not something wrong, it's not something to be ashamed of, it's just a different way of thinking. And I think it's treated really respectfully, and actually where the problems arise is down to poor communication and assumptions being made, and fear of assumptions being made. So not feeling able to be honest because you're afraid, or because the characters are afraid of how that will make them seem to a world that I think probably doesn't understand autism as it should. So yeah, I mean, that is also partly what I've been telling myself, that it's okay that I now love romance because it's romance with substance. Yeah. So anyway, let's move on to those. Let's move on to the next ones. On a very similar theme, I have for you 2 more romances. So the next one is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. So I read this in June, and I think I am going to do another video about this one and its sequel because I loved them both so much. So Get a Life, Chloe Brown is about Chloe Brown, who is a woman. She is a black woman who has fibromyalgia, who has a kind of chronic illness, and she realizes that she thinks that her life is really boring. So yeah, she sets herself a list of things that she wants to do to be a kind of more exciting person. So there's things like, yes, enjoy a drunken night out, ride a motorbike, go camping, have meaningless but thoroughly enjoyable sex, travel the world with nothing but hand luggage, and do something bad. So one of the things that she does very early on in the book is she moves out. So she's been living with her family, and she moves out to her own apartment, and that is where she meets Red, who is essentially like I can't remember what it's called. It's like the caretaker of the apartment, but I don't think is it superintendent? I can't remember. So, anyway, that's how they meet. And initially they really don't like each other. So Red thinks that Chloe is really stuck up, and I can't remember what Chloe thinks of Red. She just doesn't like him. Yeah, they don't like each other, and then they spend a bit more time together, and then they do, and then there's hot sex. So yeah, I really liked this. It took me a little bit longer to get into than the Kiss Quotient, but once I was into it, like, the sex is just so hot. And again, it's back to about romance with substance, because what I really loved about this was the presentation of a black, curvy woman with a disability, and none of those things are holding her back. Her race is not really mentioned much at all. A little bit, there's a little bit on microaggressions, because that is real life for many black women, or all black women, but it's not the central theme. And neither is her size. Her size is barely mentioned at all. It's actually really only because I saw on the cover that she was curvy that you really would kind of know that she was curvy. But as a curvy woman myself, I really appreciated that representation was there, but it wasn't at no point was it a bad thing. And actually, it's one of the reasons why Red was really attracted to her. Like, he keeps going on about her thighs, and I was like, yes. So yeah, and then her disability was much more of a central theme, but again, I think it was dealt with really well, presented really carefully, and it's the reality of having a chronic illness and chronic pain, and things that are commonly not well understood by society, but again dealt with very respectfully, and again, its own voice is writing, because from what I understand, Talia Hibbert herself has a chronic illness, so she understands what it's like, and that really showed here. So absolutely fantastic. Read that in like 24 hours, and then that brings me on to the 4th romance in this video, which is the sequel to Get a Life, Chloe Brown, which is Take a Hint, Dani Brown. So like the Kiss Quotient series, the Brown Sisters series, I don't think you have to read them in order. So Chloe and Red do pop up in this book, but yeah, I don't think you would need to have read the first one. I read this a few days ago. I'd been doing a lot of overtime at work, so I took some hours back, took the afternoon off, put my phone on airplane mode, and read the whole thing. It was so brilliant. I like this more than Chloe Brown, and I didn't think that was possible when I finished Chloe Brown, but oh my god. So Dani Brown is Chloe's sister, and she is a PhD student, and she is someone who doesn't believe in relationships. She only is interested in kind of friends with benefits arrangement and casual sex, and she hasn't had that for a little while, so she wants that, but it comes from a place of she believes that other people will not want to date her because she's not good at dating, so she doesn't remember anniversaries. She gets very caught up in her PhD work because that's so important to her, and therefore, she tends to sort of kind of let people down, as it were. And then you have Zaf, who is a ex-rugby player. He works security at the university that Dani works at, and they're sort of friends, but he is obviously hopelessly in love with her. And right at the beginning of the book, there's a video that emerges of the two of them, and there's a whole rumour going around that they're dating, and because of that it starts to generate a bit of interest in the non-profit that Zaf has set up. So he asks Danny if they could be in like a fake relationship, and of course he is totally in love with her when he asks her that, and that's how things evolve. So yeah, more hot sex and just more like humour and love, and I loved Zaf so much. Like, he's so emotionally mature, despite the fact that he has experienced grief, and therefore there's parts that he's kind of suppressing. So when I say emotionally mature despite the suppression, I mean that, like, even though he's suppressing all this stuff, he is still so like kind and considerate and in touch with his own emotions, and I just loved him. And Danny she was fantastic. She was funny and feisty and smart, and yeah, so brilliant. And again, you've got really great representation. So you've got so Danny is bisexual, so that's really, I thought, really well handled, and Zaf is a Muslim, or sort of non-practicing Muslim, and again, that's just there. It's not a thing. It's not a central theme. So, you know, Talia Hibbert, and I think she even says this on her website, she just really writes fantastic, diverse characters and stories, and she's so brilliant. But like I said, the overriding theme is funny, warm, lovely, hot sex, everything, just yes. So right, we're nearly at 12 minutes and I've only done 4 books because I've been rabbiting on about my romances. I probably don't even need to do another video about the Brown sisters after that, but never mind. So the next book, again, probably won't come as a surprise to anyone, and that's Afropean by Johnny Pitts. So Afropean won the Jalak Prize this year. I was reading the Jalak Prize long list, so I had actually already bought this on Kindle in some kind of, I think loads of things were on sale last year, so happened to have it, but I read it because I was reading the Jalak Prize long list, and I'm so glad I did. I will link the Jalak Prize videos down below. I won't spend too long on this because this video is going to get very long, but it's essentially a non-fiction. It's sort of like a travel memoir of Johnny Pitts going around Europe to understand the experiences of black people, and the whole idea of a kind of joint identity of African and European for, you know, people of African origin who are living in Europe or born in Europe, and what that means and what they experience. And it was so fascinating and so interesting, and so much stuff around other European countries' role in colonialism, because it's just not something that you read about very often. It's just so fantastic, and I'm so pleased it won the Jalak Prize. I think I probably would have rioted if it hadn't won. The next one I have is The Starlight Sea by Erin Morgenstern. So The Night Circus, which was the first book that Ellen Morgenstern wrote, is one of my favourite books of all time. And it took her, I think, I want to say like 6 or 7 years to write another book. And then, of course, I was super nervous that I wouldn't like it because I love The Night Circus so much. And it was fine because I loved it. Honestly, I absolutely loved it. It was just, The Night Circus, there's so much kind of intricacy and detail of magic and a really rich world that she creates. The Starlight Sea is that, but basically on acid. Like, the world is so much bigger and more sprawling, and it's a love letter to stories and storytelling, and it's like stories within stories and worlds within worlds, and it could have been awful because it could have just gone too far and just got so sprawling and too big to be able to tie things up or whatever, but it just didn't do that. It was just, the whole thing was just so rich and so delicious. I mean, I feel like it's a really wanky phrase to use about writing, but if delicious was ever going to be used in the context of writing a story, this is absolutely what it applies to. So yeah, I don't really want to say any more than that. I know I haven't really said anything about the plot, but I think you just have to go into it and just experience it. That's all I'm going to say. The next one I have is a very recent favourite, which is Africa, Amazing Africa. So I think I talked about this in the last couple of videos, and it's just so good. I'm laughing because it is a kid's book. It's a kid's picture book, and I am so enamoured by it. totally obsessed with it. So it's, yeah, literally, it's a kids picture book. It takes every country in Africa and does a little profile with some interesting facts. And I learned so much from this book. This might be like one of the most educational books I've read in a long time. And it's for kids, so I don't know what that says about me. But it's fantastic. The art is lovely. So that's just a random page. The art is beautiful. And like I said, there's just so many facts, and it's just so... There's so many people, white people, who still think Africa is a country. So just if you come across anyone who thinks Africa is a country, just buy them this. There you go. Done. Job done. The next one I have is another kind of picture type book, which is Stories for South Asian Supergirls. So this is a kind of a Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls type book. So it goes through profiling a woman, and then so you have like the art, and then you have the profile. And the art, so all of these profiles are women who are South Asian or of South Asian descent, and the artists are also, I believe, South Asian or of South Asian descent. So yeah, I love these kinds of books, just because there's so many people who just do not have anywhere near the profile, whether currently or in history, that they absolutely deserve. So, you know, you have people in here that you might be familiar with, like Nadia Hussain, who won the Great British Bake Off, Monica Ali, who's an author, Jhumpa Lahiri, who's an author. There's, you know, I didn't know Norah Jones was of South Asian descent. So Mindy Kaling, and then just so many more who you might never have heard of, who I certainly hadn't never heard of. So I just thought it was absolutely fantastic book. It's so interesting, so educational. Two more, I think that's 10. One, what am I trying to say? Number 9? Is this number 9? Good Talk by Mira Jacob. I'm not sure if I've talked about this on my channel or even on my Instagram, but this is a graphic novel that I picked up as part of a big book crawl that I went on with some girls from Instagram back in March. And it's a graphic novel memoir, and it's basically about the author Mira Jacob talking to her son about race. So yeah, it's really brilliant. It's a really unusual visual style, which I found really interesting. So you've got basically like the characters are overlaid in drawing, but you've got then like photos in the background, and it was just really, yeah, it's just a really unique book. It's a really unique book. It's really intimate in the fact that it's just all these conversations between a mother and her sons, and it's, you know, gave me so much pause to think about how, you know, if I ever had children, how would I talk about race with my children? And yeah, it's really, really good. I can't really say much more than that, just because I think a little bit like the Starlight Sea, for different reasons. I think you just need to read it and experience it. There you go. The last book I have is Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. So I read Akwaeke Emezi's debut novel, Freshwater, last year, and it was it was fantastic. That is a really unique, memorable book, and Emezi's writing style is just that. It's very unique, very memorable. And Pet is their debut YA novel. And this is about a girl called Jam, her best friend Redemption, and they are living in a world where there are no monsters anymore. So all of the monsters are gone. And but then one day, Jam manages to bring forth a monster called Pet. And Pet is basically saying that there is evil lurking in Redemption's house. So, it's a story... I think it's a story to kind of help young adults process some of the evils that are still in this world, in a context where adults will generally kind of deny that evil exists. I think that's sort of it, really. So, because the whole point about the monsters being gone is that then adults will be like, well, there are no monsters anymore. Well, what are you talking about? No, you're just afraid or whatever, there are no monsters anymore. But in this case, then you have Pet who is saying there is a monster. Well, Pet is a monster, but there is a monster. So yeah, I think that was just a really, really clever way of writing a book and helping young adults deal with issues that can be very heavy, that are very heavy, and recognize that, and also help adults recognize all of the times where we will deny things are happening. And children are not stupid. Children can see things are happening and they might be afraid of things and they might not know how to process it, and that more often than not adults will go down the route of just saying it's fine, you're going to be okay, like there's no problem, like what are you talking about, the monsters are gone, there's no monsters under your bed, etc. So yeah, I think I've done a really hash job of explaining this, but it's very, very good. The representation in this, again, is fantastic. So you have trans characters, non-binary characters, polyamory, all of the characters. So Pet Jam and her family are black characters, like, and I think maybe Redemption, his family, black characters, I'm not sure, I can't remember. But yeah, the representation is absolutely fantastic. And I am actually going to be rereading this month, which is kind of crazy because I'm pretty sure I only read it back in like March, maybe even April. But I am rereading this because July is Transathon. So I will maybe do a video about that at some point. But yes, it's an absolutely fantastic book. I would highly recommend it. And that is why it is in my top 10. That's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love to know what it would be in your halfway top 10. And what have been your favourite books of the year so far, and we will see which of these books make it into my overall 2020 top 10. Maybe I'll only read crap books for the rest of 2020. I hope that's not the case. Hopefully I'll read lots of good books and it'll be a tussle. Which of my 4 romances might not make the cut? So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel. And I hope you're all doing very well, and I hope to see you again soon for another video. Bye.